What do you do when overnight a global pandemic plunges the organization you lead into uncertainty? Welcome to the Pivot. Hi, everybody. Jen DeVore here, Civic Impact Manager at the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia. Thank you for watching The Pivot. It occurred to me a few episodes ago that maybe some of you at home aren't familiar with the Economy League, so I just wanted to give you a quick snapshot. The Economy League is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that addresses critical issues facing Greater Philadelphia by providing research and data analytics, connecting leaders, and advancing shared solutions. So it's the perfect opportunity for a show like The Pivot to come out of the Economy League as we highlight regional leaders on how they're pivoting in COVID-19. This episode is going to be a little bit different today, so I'm going to get into that in a minute, but I'm excited to introduce our guests. We have Russ Starke, Chief Executive Officer from Think Company, and he's going to join us with his colleagues, Shawn Hickman, Principal Design Systems, and Allison Drechsler, Design Lead. So if you guys want to turn your cameras on.
Hello.
Hi.
Howdy.
This is great. This is my first three-person interview, so we're gonna navigate that together today as well. So thank you guys so much for coming on. I'm excited about today's episode. As you know from watching the show, we've interviewed some really incredible leaders that are doing inspiring things with their companies and their organizations. And the point of the show is to really let people know at home how they can start to consider their own pivot. So I jumped at the idea to have you three on, and I'll let you explain what Think Company is. But today we're going to talk about how logistics and strategy can fall into place to create a successful pivot. So this is more of an educational program today. So to start, why don't you guys give, because I think it's better in your own words, why don't you guys give us just an overview of what Think Company is and what makes you guys, the perfect guest for today? No pressure.
Sure. Yeah. So Think Company, we're a digital experience design company. So basically, our job to be done is that we help our customers provide the absolute best experiences for their customers and for their employees, right? And in 2020, that is almost always a mix of both digital and non-digital touch points. And we go very deep on the design and the development of digital systems. And yeah, absolutely. In the current scenario that we're in, we're very busy looking at folks that maybe prior weren't so sure about how digital they wanted to go or felt comfortable going or had the capability of going, and now a lot of us don't have a choice, right? So that's the world that we've been in for a long time and that we've been kind of anticipating. We didn't see it happening in this way, obviously. None of us did, but this is kind of the world that we've been helping people get optimized for.
Excellent. Yeah, no, and that's why, I know, and Think Company's been involved with the Economy League for many years now and is a great partner. And I think that's why we wanted to have you on the show, because you've been doing this even before, we've been in this crisis and this situation, helping companies pivot for a number of different scenarios. So can you give us, talk a little bit about how you've done that and maybe some examples?
Yeah, sure. I think, probably the most common pivot scenario that we're in is one that we have been seeing for the last 15, 20 years, which is, a lot of big organizations that have traditionally, gotten by on being product leaders or being operationally excellent and having, that kind of reputation in the marketplace. They've started realizing, that where customer satisfaction or customer experience and even employee experience and satisfaction has always kind of been an afterthought because those other two areas were so strong that like when that heat starts ratcheting up, and you start seeing people go elsewhere because they want a better experience or they want to be treated differently or what have you, you start realizing, oh wait, that can't be an afterthought anymore. And the easy response to that is, well, let's just put another system in place, or let's redesign the system that exists, or let's finally take all these Frankenstein systems that didn't talk to each other well and finally get them talking to each other. Those are pieces of the fix, but the fix is bigger than that, and it's a pivot. It's really starting to make thinking about customer experience, thinking about employee experience, making that front and center in all the conversations that you're having. And that's about, that's about process. That's about even coming to the table, operating in a way that you are making sure you have empathy for the context of a challenge, that you are employing creativity in the solution of that challenge, and then, using rationality in how you validate and test and roll out solutions. And that's different than I think, it's been for a long time, right? People got away with just kind of pushing their way through, and the world is changing. And so we've helped a lot of big organizations pivot in that way. And pivot is a good word because, it's operating and thinking in a new way. And obviously now, we're seeing that again, where, again, I think folks that might have been hesitant to do certain things digitally, which, by the way, includes us, includes everybody, things that we maybe wouldn't have done digitally in the past. Now we don't, right now, at least, we don't have a choice. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be like that forever, but we do know that we can use digital technology and a mix of digital and non-digital touch points to optimize experiences. And that's a big change, and that's what we help people do.
Yeah. It seems like there's a lot going on, right? So you have this, whether it's now or it was before. If I'm a business owner or I lead an organization, there's the pressure coming down that knows that a change has to be made. There's thinking ahead, as you said, to the user experience, which seems like there's so many steps to get there. And then to also consider the technology and the logistical parts. I feel like overwhelmed just explaining that scenario, right?
Yeah.
So I can't imagine being in it. What is one of the first things or the first thing that people really need to realize or consider as they start to recognize that a change is needed or a change is coming, and that they have to start to come up with this strategy?
Sure. So, Shawn and Allison, I'll answer this first, and then please add what you would say.
Yeah.
For me, I think that the first thing that you have to realize is that, luckily, we don't hear people saying this that much anymore, but once in a while we still hear it. That phrase when people used to say, "If we build it, they will come."
Yeah.
That is not true.
No.
That is not true anymore. And so I think the first thing that people have to realize is that you have got to get out of the way of your own bias and your own ego, because as humans, we apply bias and ego to every decision that we make. And assuming that because this is what I want and what I think the future should be and what I think the solution is, look, that's important. Your gut is important. Your insight, your experience is important, but it needs to be tempered by doing the research, making sure you objectively understand who else is in your ecosystem. And that's not just customers. That's people who serve the customers. It's the business, it's IT, it's HR, understanding everybody's wants, needs, pain points, actual objective workflows. That's how you get to the solution that's actually going to work and push you forward. It's not that there haven't been people that we all kind of idolize that have said, we're doing this, and then they do it and it magically happens. But there's a reason why those things are called unicorns.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, Allison, Shawn, I'd love to hear from either one of you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think another thing too, like to Russ's point, there's just a lot more choice for people today, whereas before you could build it and people would come, theoretically. But today there's just so many options out there. So, people are like, well, if this doesn't fit what I am looking for exactly, I can just go find something else. But I think another thing that's like heavily tied to jobs to be done, which is it's not uncommon that the people we work with come with a solution before even understanding what the problem is. And one of the strongest parts of jobs to be done is really like stepping away from the solution until you actually understand the problem and the job that is actually trying to be done. And I think that can be really helpful, just being mindful of, okay, do I actually understand this well enough to even say what the solution should be, and to be able to kind of understand when you don't know stuff, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I'll just say too, Shawn, because I know you mentioned jobs to be done, and that is a business development method, philosophy. I'm an art school major, so I don't know what the right terms are, but it's a way of thinking of business that we at the Economy League really love to use when we implement our own strategies. But maybe can you just give like a very brief overview of what that is, just in case someone's at home watching and doesn't know and wants to learn more?
Yeah, I mean, it's at a high level, it's just a way of understanding what your customers are trying to do with either your product or service. It really got its start in like kind of the marketing side of the house. It's like, why did someone buy this product, and what job were they hiring it for? So the famous story you'll hear is stuff about milkshakes, right? With McDonald's, or buying mattresses, that kind of thing. But at its core, it's just a methodology for understanding what people are trying to get done with your product or service and what they're quote unquote hiring it for.
Yeah, I love the example, Shawn. Like, I feel like the quickest, best one is that one about like somebody who buys a drill doesn't buy a drill because they love that drill. They want the hole in the wall. That's what they care about.
Yeah.
And that's the job to be done, right?
Yeah.
Is the hole, not the drill. All right, that's great. So for viewers at home, you've heard me lightly mention jobs to be done. Now you know the bigger picture and something to Google. So great. And then Allison, did you want to add to the conversation about this topic? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, to Russ's earlier point around, you can't just build it and people will come to it. You have to really have a deeper understanding of what the job is. A bigger part of pivoting as well is taking that framework of jobs to be done and that thought process and really putting yourself in the shoes of actually doing that task. So kind of what Russ and Shawn were pointing to around the research and the process that actually goes into further honing and defining what those new priorities are in a pivot. Empathy really is a huge part of that process as well. And it really helps to kind of gain clarity around what these new priorities are moving forward.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I love I love the way you put it. If they build it, like, they might not come, right? And we believe that at the Economy League too. And I think that's the big part of our mission of connecting diverse leaders to make sure that we're getting input and buy-in at the start, so people will come if it's their own, in a sense. So I think that's something really good to remember as well. So pivoting results in so much shift and so much change. Sometimes it could be a complete 360 of your organization. How important is it to stick to your original goals when you're considering a shift in plans? Because sometimes it could be easy to kind of feel like you have to throw everything out the window, but that may not always be the case. I don't know.
Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit. Like, I think it depends on what your goals are, right? So I think when it comes to your core values and the way that you operate and why you're in business in the first place, I think, it's up to you to determine whether you put those things in place because they're not up for question and they're not up for discussion. I know that's how we feel about our core values, but those are kind of different than our business goals, right?
Yeah.
And so, for us, it's easier for us to say this because, like, as a services company, what we care at the end of the day is that we're helping people provide the best possible experiences. And to what we said earlier, like, we don't really care how, right? So if as the years go on, some of the tools that we've used, and this has happened, have changed, and the solutions change, we don't care. We're not precious about that. We care about the end result. And so I would think that, in a product company, it might be a little more different when you have things on the shelf that you're trying to build or you're doing R&D around that. But same kind of thing, like, as you're doing R&D, you're anticipating, you're changing, your product is evolving over time. So I think, people, naturally are going through that evolution of what is our ultimate goal. And again, if you're focusing on the job to be done, then you get less precious about the widget or the thing. Right. And I think there's a balance between knowing why you exist and what your place is in the market and what you provide and why you're there, and staying true to that. But allowing yourself some freedom to not get hung up on certain things that can't ever change. Because I think, we think about that a lot. It's easy for people to, like, come up with a methodology and then say, this is how it is no matter what, and not pivot and not change when new information comes to light. And you will be outstripped if that happens.
Yeah. And so I think it's, so you might have to shift the goals, but again, going back to the jobs to be done, the job will remain the same. And I like what you said about I forget how you said, like, the values or your, why you're in business in the first place. What are some ways that you can keep that North Star, alive and well, as you're dealing with all the overwhelming feelings and tasks that go with change?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of them is to actually consciously sit down and articulate what those things are. And a lot of people have been doing that lately, but to actually sit down, with your team and kind of talk about why are we here and what are those core values and what are we trying to accomplish, and articulating them and putting them up there, as a barometer that you can measure decisions against. It's funny because that sometimes sounds a little soft skill-ish, and people are like, I don't know if I should spend time on that, but it's one of the most important things that we ever did as a company, because it provides a barometer for us. And whenever I've had people say like, oh, that's a little squishy, my response to that is, yeah, I understand why you're saying that, but I'm not on board with that comment, because it is so much harder to run a company thinking about adhering to these core values than just being able to throw them out the window and shoot from the hip all the time and not care about what happens in your wake. But it is also exponentially more rewarding to do so. And the other thing that's interesting about like something like core values and how that's like a different kind of shade of goals is that they remain aspirational, right? So we have these 6 core values that are out there, and I don't pretend that I exhibit them every day. I try. And as a company, we try to hold true to them, but that's our North Star. And it's not things about like, make sure that we're always delivering this kind of deliverable. It's things like making sure that we're always being honest with our clients and with one another, that we're collaborating well, that we're being of service. It's those kinds of things. And that allows for a lot of room underneath to kind of change, as long as we hold true to those more North Star type directives.
Yeah, and I just want to add on to that a little bit. I think like that's like part one is like defining those things, but the other part is the implementation of that stuff. And I think like Russ and the leadership team over the years have done a really good job of talking about these things a lot through just company events, or even in, like we use Slack internally. And, when people exhibit these core values, like that is shared, like those stories are shared, which is just like really subtle ways to kind of embed that in people over time. So I think like it's easy to say like, yeah, we need to write down our core values, but it's a completely different thing to like instill those in people and exhibit those, as often as you can.
Yeah, I like the squishy stuff. I think it's important, right? It's leading with emotional intelligence, and it goes hand in hand. So so we talked about the what, the need to change, the need to shift, the need to pivot, the why because of X, right? Like right now we're talking about COVID-19, but obviously there's other reasons to do that, and there will be, other reasons in the future. So let's talk a little bit about the how. How do you do this? How do you strategize a plan B, C, D, whatever, in the world that we're in right now, which is mainly remote and virtual? So I think this is a good time to talk a little bit about the logistics and the technical aspects.
Yeah, and this is a good time to talk to the experts. So I'm gonna.
Yeah. So Allison and I have both been on a few recently, but I know a bunch of people at Think have done a lot of strategy stuff, planning, and even just like facilitation of either small sessions or even large sessions with like 20 to 40 people. And I think it almost sounds silly to say it out loud, but like the first answer is like, plan it out, like put some thought into it. And that's something that we do all the time, which is, like when we're working with our clients, we'll have kind of recurring check-ins, and say it's an hour. We want that hour to be as productive as possible. So we actually put a lot of thought into what that hour looks like. So when you think about, this situation, it's like, all right, we can't be in person. We're all remote. And now this session is going to be 4 hours or 8 hours. The fundamentals are really not different. It's really, okay, let's put thought into what this is going to be like, whether it's digital or in person. And then I really think that's kind of step one. And Allison, you can kind of jump in with more
Well,
detail.
yeah, I was going to say, to add to your point, because you're absolutely right. Like it's the logistics are a huge part of this. now. I mean, always, but especially now. But I would say something that has been different since we've gone into this remote world is that you even have to plan and think about the logistics of the social emotional part of things as well. So, I mean, you know, obviously before we were all on the computer, we could have these in-person meetings and you could sense how the room was feeling and kind of like work the room, so to speak, in these larger meetings. And, you know, it's just a little different now. You have to really be cognizant of how people might feel about being in a remote setting. And so everything that goes into these meetings is not only around like, okay, who's going to be there? How long do we have? What's the agenda? But it's also, does everyone feel comfortable? Like, do these people typically live in a setting where they are logging in frequently to have remote meetings like this? And if not, you just have to be aware of that. So, you know, to give examples, it's even going as far as sending an email ahead of time, kind of outlining the rules of engagement for this meeting. Times when, you know, it's expected that you have your camera on and your camera off, and, you know, when are breaks acceptable? And then also just being really aware of everyone's facial expressions on the Zoom, and being sure to like do a lot actually of what you're doing, Jen, where it's like, okay, I'm looking at people's faces. This person hasn't spoken yet. I'm going to call their names so that they know it's time for them to speak. So while a lot of the core elements of conducting these sessions and running the work is the same, there is a new level of finesse and attention that we're having to provide for, you know, to ensure that, again, everyone is comfortable and that the meeting ends on a note where everyone's weighed in, they feel good about what we're working on, and they know that the next meeting is going to go well too.
Yeah, so it sounds like strong facilitation skills is going to be key, and planning ahead. And I love that you even mentioned breaks, because I feel like that's something that's kind of lost in the virtual world. Even when you have back-to-back meetings, there's sometimes a moment where, you know, you have to travel to the next meeting, or, you know, you stop for lunch, and it's not like that right now. So that's a good reminder. What about like some fun things to do to kind of keep the energy up? Because I imagine that could be hard to just, I mean, we do it like, you know, we're sitting in front of a computer now. It can be hard to, not that this isn't an engaging interview by any means, but, you know, when you're on your third or fourth call for the day, it's tough, right?
Yeah. 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 Some of the fun things that have happened are, cause like, excuse me, with this remote stuff, the tools are like hyper efficient, which is like good, but also when you're in person, you know, there's a little bit of like, you do that mingling when you first get in there, you just do a little chit chat, that kind of thing. It's harder to do that with, you know, large group settings like this. And some people have started to, as people are kind of coming into a Zoom call, they're playing like, you know, a fun video, whether it's like a live stream of like the zoo and penguins swimming around, or like, you know, corgi puppies running around or something like, you know, just something for people to just like react to right away and go, oh, this is kind of nice, you know, just like little touches like that, or, you know, some things that people have been doing, which is a nice way to kind of break people into it.
That's great.
Yeah.
So we're almost done with our time here. Any final words, tips, or advice for those that are watching this at home, that are hoping to incorporate these tactics into their own pivot?
I would say, like, if possible, you know, teamwork makes all of these sessions work really well. So for a lot of these tools, for the screen sharing tools, like Zoom, for instance, has like this concept of breakout rooms. So when in large groups, you can have these multiple rooms. But for the person like facilitating the conversation and then having to manage the breakout rooms in Zoom and all that stuff, that's really difficult. So we've had certain people who are like assigned, like, okay, you're going to manage the Zoom and you're going to facilitate and you're going to do this, right? Just to make, you know, just to relieve the mental load of managing all this stuff, which can be really chaotic when you're trying to just run a group setting, a group session for, you know, 20 plus people.
Yeah, no, that's smart. Anyone else? Final thoughts?
One other thought that I just thought of as Shawn was talking through that about teamwork. Also, you know, the collaboration element in our work is super important. So, you know, something to think about as you're pivoting into this new way of working is just, there's nothing wrong with scheduling a meeting just to collaborate and just to have like FaceTime with your team. And then, similarly, just blocking off time to get together as a team to even talk about just non-work related things just to keep morale up has been something that's proven really successful for our teams here. Because, there is a lot going on. There's a lot on people's minds at the moment. And so having that designated and intentional time to really break out of that and be reminded of the closeness that we have at our company.
Yeah, some people have even been doing like walking meetings where they all get on like Zoom just around their neighborhoods and just walk outside and have their little check-in just to like get out of the house too. So that's been a nice way to do things.
That's great. Yeah. I'm just thinking about going for a walk now. It's a good reminder to do while we're home.
Well,
like,
the
last time I did that.
Yeah, the last thing I would add is to thank you for having us on here, and obviously continued thanks to the Economy League for everything that they're doing, and I love the way that Jeff has been talking about the Economy League and the parallels to the fact that the Economy League has existed, way back during World War I and during the Great Depression, and even during those times, there's evidence in the documentation and stuff that they were putting out that they were looking through it and they were looking past it to what comes next. And I know the Economy League's doing that again right now, and we're happy to be a part of it and glad that the Economy League is out there doing what they do every day. And we're happy that you had us on, and we certainly hope that anybody who might be watching this is hanging in there as best as possible, and family and friends and everybody are safe. And we look forward to seeing everybody in person when that's possible again.
Thank you so much. No, I appreciate that. And great shout out to our executive director, Jeff Hornstein. The Pivot, The Pivot is part of our own pivot as an organization to try to stay, relevant and be a resource in these times so we can continue, to convene and to advance shared solutions, right? That's what this is all about. So I'm going to share your contact information here. In just 1 second. If somebody wanted to reach out and use your services, what would be the best way for them to contact you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the easiest way to get in touch with us is just to shoot us a message at info@thinkcompany.com, because that's a very highly watched over mailbox. So that gets a response pretty much right away. So that's the easiest way to get to us. But certainly there's plenty of other contact options on our website. And yeah, if anybody is interested in what we do, we'd love to hear from you.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Russ, Shawn, and Allison from Think Company. We really appreciate you breaking down some of the logistics around your pivot strategy. This is the pivot. We should have a contest for how many times we use this word per episode. If you have a story of your own to share or know someone who's doing something really incredible in these times, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to us at pivot@economyleague.org. You can find us on Twitter as well, and you can see this episode and more at on our website, economyleague.org/thepivot. Thank you all very much, and we wish you a safe and happy week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.